Let's take this on now with Dan Perry, who is an Israeli affairs analyst and a former editor of the Associated Press in Europe, the Middle East and Africa. Joins us now from Tel Aviv. Dan, great to have you with us. So first up, what do you make of this potential move by Benjamin Netanyahu?
It's clear that the government is desperate to find a way to achieve the aim that they have set out for themselves, which is to end the war with Hamas no longer factoring Gaza. And it may be saber-rattling to impact the negotiations. It could be something more partial than has been reported. If it really turns out that the Israelis decide to fully occupy Gaza, meaning to go into all the areas they've refrained from going into until now, that would saddle them with an occupation of over 2 million people, half of whom are under 17, many of whom are radicalized and angry and desperate and can be turned into a militant for 10 shekels. It is something that the military makes clear that they would very much rather avoid. There is no system for handling these people. They're feeding the medical issues, the reconstruction. Israel's not prepared for this. The army's rather exhausted. The public opposes it. The military opposes it. So I have to think that even if this goes forward, it will not be total and certainly not permanent, as has been suggested at the UN. It's basically either saber-rattling for the negotiations or a move intended, at least by the government, maybe not the far-right aspect of the coalition, to be temporary. I fear that the idea of scaring Hamas into submission is not likely to work because, in my reading of Hamas, they are prepared to have everyone die, including themselves and every Gazan, if need be, and all the hostages.
Do you think this is
a very difficult situation?
Right. Do you think this is all part of the Israeli Prime Minister's playing of the field to ensure that he keeps his grip on the premiership for as long as possible?
Well, certainly not all. In Israel, nothing is all part of something. Netanyahu is a schemer and a cynic, and he has and a great tactician and a great politician. He has many balls up in the air. There is a legitimate confusion in Israeli body politic about the end of the war, because whereas the vast majority of the people would agree to a deal right now, ending the war, leaving Hamas there if need be, at least for the moment, and returning the hostages, a similar majority, probably 80% in both cases, is mortified by the idea of the war ending with Hamas still in power. That's a contradiction, and Netanyahu feeds off that contradiction. Now, with Netanyahu, there's always the suspicion, and this applies to the vast majority of the Israeli public and a small majority of his own voters, that a big part of his calculation is a preservation of his coalition, because he has come to believe that he has the divine right of kings and he must be in power and Israel will collapse without him. I think he actually has this pathology, and in his mind he has to keep his coalition together. And two far-right parties, and by now they're well-known, their leaders are well-known internationally, Ben Gvir and Smotrich, insist on war continuing, and they very well may not be bluffing when they say that if Netanyahu ends the war with Hamas not eradicated, then they will leave the coalition, and that will bring about elections that all polls show Netanyahu will lose.
Right, and it certainly flies in the face of growing international clamour, and as you say, within Israel itself, with these very senior Israeli defence veterans who say the war is won and the attacks must stop to allow the full flow of aid. He's actually doing completely the opposite.
Absolutely, but critically not from the US. You see, Israel primarily needs the United States on its side, and Trump has said basically occupying Gaza or not is up to Israel. He faces opposition from the public. He faces opposition from the military and the rest of the security establishment, and almost anyone of consequence in Israel, frankly, and of course the Europeans and the rest of the world. But he has the support of the White House, so I think he does have some room for maneuver. I think the major reason to believe that he'll eventually flip is that elections have to be held in Israel by mid to late 2026. And he cannot go to elections still at war in Gaza. The public does not want an occupation over 2 million Palestinians, and the probable consequences of that, which are not just bad for the Palestinians, as you report all the time, correctly so, but terrible for Israel. The economic drag, the continuing loss of life, the forever insurgency that they're going to face, and of course, the very likely sacrifice of the hostages are all extremely unpopular. So if I had to bet, I would say sometime by October, November, this will change. And I think Hamas knows this and is playing for this time. it's very important that everyone come together to create a narrative that enables that war to end in a way that does indeed remove Hamas from Gaza. And in that regard, I take a lot of succor from the decision by the Arab countries, including Qatar, last week to call on Hamas to not just give up power in Gaza, but disarm. This is critical. And that will enable Israel a ladder to climb down. Israel will then have to accept the flip side of that, which is that there can't be a vacuum in Gaza, and the force that takes over Gaza really has to be the Palestinian Authority, however reformed, rejuvenated, and assisted by the Arab League, by NATO, by the US, and even by Israel if need be.
All right, Dan, we've run out of time. Much more to be discussed. Dan, appreciate that. In the meantime, Dan Perry speaking to us there from